Superman fans to your speeding bulletin for the week June 14th to June 20th, 2013. A week which saw the release of Man of Steel to cinemas, which then saw it shoot to #1 at the box office, and it was also the week that I returned home from my trip to the USA. Let's jump right in and take a look. In movie news, Man of Steel was released in cinemas across the USA and other countries on June 14th, and fans finally got to see the new Superman movie for themselves. While critic reviews were mixed, fans have mostly been very positive in their reaction to Man of Steel, even with the controversial conclusion. The premieres didn't let up for the cast and crew though. First, Henry travelled back home to the island of Jersey in the UK for the red carpet premiere there, and then he travelled to Mexico City and Taiwan before heading to the 16th Shanghai International Film Festival for China's premiere. Next stop, Australia. The cast were special guests on a number of talk shows this week. Some of the highlights included Kevin Costner revealing on Live with Kelly and Michael that he nearly passed on playing Jonathan Kent because he wasn't really a big fan of superheroes growing up. Russell Crowe related the story of how he met Henry Cavill when he was 16 on the Graham Norton show. Christopher Maloney spoke with Vulture.com about the role in Man of Steel playing Colonel Hardy and the training he had to do for this film. He said, "We did some weapons training, shooting guns, making transitions from one weapon to another. I just had to make sure I didn't shoot my stunt guy that was sitting next to me, which I almost did." BoxOffice.com reported that Man of Steel broke through the $200 million point on its opening weekend. The North American debut for the Superman reboot exceeded expectations by taking in $128.7 million, up from Sunday's $125 million estimate. Already #1 in the US box office, the Man of Steel movie also took the top position on the UK box office charts this week. Warner Brothers Pictures released a video giving us a behind-the-scenes look at Hans Zimmer's crafting the musical score to Man of Steel. Check it out.
Do you want us to go to the end of 16? After finishing my adventures on Dark Knight, I decided we need to go into a completely different direction.
BleedingCool.com spoke with screenwriter David Goyer about Man of Steel and learnt of 2 scenes that didn't make it into the movie, but one of which was actually filmed and later cut. He said there was a little scene in which Jonathan and Martha take a baby Cal to a paediatrician because he's starting to experience these changes. They do a hearing test on him where they're dialing up these sounds and baby Cal screams and it blows out all the windows. The National Guard YouTube channel released 4 behind-the-scenes videos highlighting the training that Jim Jones put both soldiers and actors through to acquire the physical performance necessary for the individual roles. Episode 4 of the 4-video series is specifically about the training Henry Cavill and Archie Trower did for Man of Steel. The galleries have partnered with Warner Brothers to celebrate the upcoming Australian release of Man of Steel in an exclusive promotion from June 13th to July 12th, 2013. Walk the gallery's red carpet and see the official Man of Steel costume alongside stills from the film produced by Christopher Nolan. While you are there, extend your arms and soar over the city of Sydney and New York in a 3D flight simulator. For more information, visit thegalleries.com. Speaking of Australia, Village Roadshow, the partner to Warner Brothers in Australia, have released the following message from Henry Cavill, promoting the June 27th release of Man of Steel in Australia.
Hi roadies, I'm Henry Cavill and check out this clip of my new movie Man of Steel in cinemas June 27.
Why did you send me here? You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will stumble. They will fall. But you will help them. You will guide them. You will give them hope.
Henry Cavill, Russell Crowe and Zack Snyder will attend the Australian premiere of Man of Steel in Sydney on June 24th. I'll be there myself. DC Collectibles unveiled their line of San Diego Comic-Con exclusives, including a 1/6 scale Man of Steel Superman variant statue, which depicts Superman in the all-black suit as seen in one sequence of the film. This statue will only be available at the Graffiti Designs booth at Comic-Con. The book titled Man of Steel Inside the Legendary World of Superman by author Daniel Wallace is now available. Warner Brothers has given the Superman homepage a look inside the 160-page book via a 10-page PDF file which you can download at our website now. And you can order your copy of Man of Steel Inside the Legendary World of Superman from our online store. Jollibee are taking kids and kids at heart on a high-flying ride as it launches limited edition Man of Steel collectibles. Until June 30, dads and mums can treat the favourite little superheroes in their lives to the Chicken Joy Man of Steel branded bucket treats, which come with a number of different Man of Steel collectibles. Film Sketcher grabbed an interview with Warren Manser, who worked as a concept artist on Man of Steel, specifically responsible for the look of Superman's costume. You can check out a whole gallery of Warren Manser's Man of Steel concept art at warrenmanser.com. The July 2013 issue of the Australian magazine Film Inc. features Man of Steel on the cover. Titled The Hero Will Rise, the 8-page feature within explores the new Superman film ahead of its release on June 27th. The issue is on stands now in Australia or can be purchased for overseas readers via zinio.com. FX Networks has acquired the rights to air the Man of Steel movie on TV. The cable network on Thursday announced that it has acquired commercial television premiere rights to 7 films including Man of Steel. However, you won't get to see Man of Steel on TV until mid to late 2015. The Wall Street Journal reported that Warner Brothers are moving forward with a sequel to Man of Steel and a Justice League movie which could be in cinemas as early as 2015. In TV news, Target has partnered with Warner Brothers Consumer Products and DC Entertainment to promote a range of new Justice League products. Now Target has unveiled their new TV spot featuring the Justice League helping a mother save the day in a last-minute shopping spree.
You know what I want.
It's time.
Well, I got what you need. So come and listen to me, baby, girl, that I want only you. But there's something that you gotta do.
Save the day with the Justice League. Only at Target.
I love your boots.
In comic book news, DC Comics announced plans to publish a new Superman Wonder Woman comic book series written by Charles Soule with art by Tony Daniel. This new comic book series will focus on 2 of the most recognisable superheroes and their budding relationship. Superman Wonder Woman #1 is scheduled to be released in October. ComicBookResources.com discovered that DC Comics is preparing to launch a new Justice League 3000 comic book series, which will reunite creators Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMatteis, and Kevin Maguire. The book will feature versions of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and The Flash, as redesigned by artist Howard Porter, presumably taking the iconic heroes 1 millennium ahead of where we are now. Superman comics available this week from June 19th include Adventures of Superman Chapter 8 digital comic has been available since June 17th. Injustice Gods Among Us Chapter 23 digital comic is available June 18th. Supergirl number 21. Smallville Season 11 Chapter 52 digital comic is available June 21st. Superman Beyond Chapter 20 digital comic is available June 22nd. And Teen Titans Volume 2 The Culling Trade paperback. There are more Man of Steel goodies available to purchase, including costumes, HeroClix figures, and more. Grab a Man of Steel Deluxe Superman children's costume for $34.65. Or how about a Man of Steel Thermos Funtainer bottle for just $15.99? These and other great Man of Steel items are available from your one-stop Superman shop, the Superman homepage online store at supermanhomepage.com/shop. In other news, Warner Brothers Consumer Products, in partnership with DC Entertainment and Sanrio, creator of the global icon Hello Kitty, announced this week they will be partnering to license a new brand collaboration that will feature Hello Kitty dressed up as her favourite DC Comics superheroes, including Wonder Woman, Superman and Batman. Look for products in 2014. In September last year, we reported on 3 fans living in Hutchinson, Kansas, who were petitioning their local mayor to change the name of their town to Smallville for one day. Their petition has been granted. For just a single day, the town of Hutchinson will be renamed Smallville on this Friday, June 21st, the same day that Clark Kent will be inducted into the Kansas Hall of Fame. I got back from my 2-week trip to the USA on Monday, having attended the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois, and then the world premiere of Man of Steel in New York. While in New York, I also got to visit with John Czaklis at Random House, the creative force behind the Man of Steel children's books, And I was also given a tour of the offices of DC Comics, where I met with editors Matt Idelson and Eddie Berganza, while also getting to hold an original copy of Action Comics #1 from 1938. All in all, a fantastic trip, really had a great time, but as they say, there's no place like home. Be sure to check out the Superman homepage for all my videos from the Superman celebration, including exclusive one-on-one interviews with Tracy Scoggins, Michael Rosenbaum and Alessandro Giuliani. That's all the Superman news there was for the week June 14th to June 20th. I'm Steve Younis from SupermanHomepage.com.
Great Scott. Great Scott. Great Scott.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another fabulous edition of Great Scott. We're in June 2013, which means the time we've all been waiting for has come and gone. What do we do now? See, what happened to me when I saw the film, and I saw it at the world premiere on June 10th in New York City, the first thing I said was, I think that may be the best movie I've ever seen. Now, many people who have spoken to me assume that that is because I have a bias toward Superman, which may be partially true. However, as a good friend of mine, Jeffrey Taylor, has said, that also makes me probably one of the better critics, because a lot of people will go to the movie and see it as a superhero movie, a romp, an action film, filled with lots of adventure and action scenes and fighting scenes and powers and cool things to look at, but not necessarily judge it as a discerning Superman fan, whereas people like myself might judge it more harshly because we are such staunch Superman fans. So, my first thought was, wow, that was the best movie I've ever seen. Then, as I thought about it a little further, I certainly felt it was the best Superman movie ever made, and for me, the best superhero movie that I've ever seen. Before this time, Avengers was at the top of my list, so all the people who are saying, well, you only think this is the best because you're a Superman fan, that would preclude me from saying anything else was better than any other Superman movie that I had seen before. And there wasn't a Superman movie in my top 5. Not a huge fan of the originals. They're a big part of my life. I love them for what they are. I will watch them as we go on. I'll watch them many more times before I'm dead. But they're not the Superman movie I would have always wanted. They're not serious. They're not adult. They're not particularly mature, which is good for a lot of things. It's good for children. It's good for young people. It's good for families. They're good for a laugh. And they're fun, they're triumphant, they're inspiring in a lot of different ways, but they're not dramatic most of the time. They're not overly serious. They're kind of goofy and they're kind of campy, as I've talked about this before, which is the exact opposite from the Nolan Batman films that I also have a bunch of problems with, as you know, those who watch. So I'm not exactly sure what I want, which brings me to another interesting point. From what we've seen with most of the reviews that have come in, before the movie was released, most critics were not enjoying the film. On Rotten Tomatoes, which is a site that you can check and see what the overall average critical combination score is of all the critiques that have been given, you can see that it is below what they consider to be good, and therefore falls into the rotten category. Once a film goes below, I think it's 50% or 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, it is considered rotten. And when I first started out, it was in the 90% points, so people who liked the film were probably rating it decent. Then, as more critics saw it, and as there were more press screenings and such, people gave it bad reviews, and it eventually moved beyond the point of being good and into rotten, which is too bad. But now we're hearing that now that the film is opened wide and everybody can see it, it seems like many audiences and audience members and general moviegoers are enjoying the film more than not enjoying the film. I don't know that that's affecting the Rotten Tomatoes score, but as you can see by the box office, at least for opening weekend, it's done pretty well. It's the #1 superhero origin movie ever made. It did open in 600 more screens than Spider-Man by Sam Raimi, the original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, which was the original #1 origin superhero movie. Money-wise, that one made $114 million, and our Man of Steel made $116 million over its first 3 days of release. Now, and that's only domestic. Worldwide, Superman is up over $200 million now as we get into the first full week after its weekend opening. It's doing pretty well. Now the question is, will it hold? If all of the critics will have you believe what they say, then probably after people see it for the first time, they won't go back for multiple viewings. And after you hear all of the negative reviews, if you haven't seen it already, a lot of people don't go to movies in the first week because they want to avoid crowds. This will cause a lot of people to avoid going to see the movie, which is another unfortunate event, because I think it is fantastic. If you saw my non-spoiler review last week, you know how I feel. I also wrote a review. There's also a review by Steve Younis and a review by Jeffrey Taylor. Steve's review does give away a few spoilers, so if you haven't yet seen the movie, if you've been holding off for the crowds to die, don't read that review. You can read my spoiler review. And at this point, I'm going to start. There's a few things in the movie that are obviously points of contention, and what I find to be funny is that I don't think you can please everybody any of the time, which is what I was saying before. You know, I wasn't pleased with the Nolan Batman films, but it's not because they were too serious. But I also am not pleased with the original Christopher Reeve Superman films because they're not serious at all. So I don't dislike the Nolan Batman films because they're too serious. I never found a lot of character or emotion in them, which I'm not going to go into now because I know that also is a point of contention for fans. My issue with people nowadays, the critics, is that it seems like the same reasons that they gave for not enjoying Superman Returns are the opposite reasons they're giving for not enjoying Man of Steel. For instance, one of the big critiques of Superman Returns was that there was no action or not enough action. And now most of the critics are saying, too much action! There's too much action in Man of Steel, we can't take it. Another critique of Superman Returns was that Superman didn't punch anybody, even in the original films. There was no punching, there was no fighting. And now the critique of Man of Steel is, there's too much fighting! Superman punches too many times in this movie! You can't go and see it, it's horrendous, he punches too much. Another critique of just the idea of Man of Steel in general was, we've already seen the origin. We saw the origin in 1978. We've seen the origin on multiple cartoon shows. We've seen the origin on Lois and Clark. We've seen the origin for 10 years, most recently on Smallville. We don't need another origin. And those same people are now complaining that there's not enough origin in Man of Steel. Geez, I wish we would have seen a full-on origin for an hour of the movie or an hour and a half with him growing up with the Kents and us really finding out how he became Superman. And yet, 7 years ago, there was no origin. Again, same thing. We needed an origin here, even though that was a continuation. And now, I don't have enough origin, and we didn't want an origin. And for the 2 years leading up to this, why do we need to see an origin again? And here's one of the biggest complaints is not enough origin story, not enough backstory, not enough this, not enough that. Which is funny, because to me, we saw more of Krypton, we saw more of Jor-El, we got more of a story there, we got more development with Lara, we understood where they were from, we understood the planet, we understood the society. And that in turn causes us to be able to understand Zod more as a villain when he comes to Earth. Terrence Stamp was great. We all love him for his over-the-top, super charismatic General Zod, but he's not particularly fearsome. He's kind of funny and goofy and fun to watch, but not necessarily scary. Not necessarily a formidable villain. But here in Michael Shannon, we have that. And that I find to be one of the greatest bonuses of this movie. I always thought Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, they were goofy, they were silly, Otis. And this is Superman, the most powerful being on Earth, the most powerful hero, the greatest superhero ever made. And he's going up, and his greatest villain is Lex Luthor, who's this goofy guy with Otis as a sidekick who swims in a pool and he wears wigs. And it's just goofy, We don't have a Lex Luthor in this movie, but we do get a very formidable Zod, and Feora is fantastic. Scary, and just awe-inspiring in her use of her military training and the way she takes people out and the way she can fight. And she's very intimidating to see on screen, and also very beautiful. It's just great. And these are great villains, And as I said, I love the Superman 2 for what it is. I love Terrence Stamp. I love Ursa in the film. And we even kind of have a non-type character who's this giant, big Kryptonian. He's like the third person that fights with Superman, just like in Superman 2. And he doesn't talk or anything, and he seems maybe like he's a little slower than the rest. You know, there's a shot in the movie where the F-15s or whatever type of planes they are come down and they start firing on Superman, and he super moves out of the way, and then they're firing at the bad guys, and Feora moves out of the way, but then the big guy who saw both of the other heroes get shot at and move doesn't move and just takes it right in the chest and goes flying back and smashes into a building or whatever, a car, a truck, something like that. So that it reminded me of maybe a non-type character where he's not quite as bright as the other guys, but maybe he's a little stronger, and he's definitely a little bigger. He's twice the size of Feora. He's huge. But it's funny, because there were some parallels, but that was another thing. Why do we need to see Zod again? We've seen Zod. And the thing is when you watch it with an open mind, or when you watch it excited like I do, or like other fans do, this is a Zod and a Feora we have never seen before. These are bad asses, and they kick asses, and they beat the crap out of things. And yes, there's a lot of destruction, and there's a lot of action, and there's a lot of awesome scenes, and the powers being seen in ways we've never seen them used before, and yet, here we go. We don't like it. It's too much action. It's too much this. It's too serious. It's too dark. It's too deadly. It's too horrible. And this is what happens when you have an alien invasion with characters that have the powers that Superman has, who has chosen to refrain from using those to a great extent because he knows it will cause a lot of damage, or it could hurt people, or it could be very dangerous. But in this case, he has to fight an invading force that all have the same powers as him. So it's not really going to be up to him whether or not he can hold back, or whether or not he can stop them from causing destruction. I mean, that's his whole plan. He's, any fight that he has with them, his whole point is to try and stop them from causing a great amount of destruction. That's the other complaint. Too much destruction. After 9/11, do we really need to see buildings falling down? No, probably not. But it has been a number of years. And there was a certain amount of time where people said, okay, in movies and in TV, let's not have plane crashes and let's not have earthquake-looking stuff because it can remind us of buildings falling down, and it's horrible, and it is. But it's also fiction. It's fantasy. It's not really happening. But the idea is to kind of come across in a realistic way, whereas we can say, if this did happen, if there were two super godlike beings fighting with each other, and one of them was bent on world destruction and destroying the human race, would he really worry about saying, well, I'll fight you, and I hate humans and I hate you, but let's go do it in a desert where there's nobody so we don't hurt anyone? And I understand the argument that Superman will try and make sure that the destruction was as limited as possible, but this is Superman's first time battling at all, the first time being Superman, and his first time facing these kind of odds. And he's trying to save the world, and he's doing it against a foe and foes that don't care about causing destruction, that don't care about hurting humanity, and that are planning on destroying the world anyway. So it's not like he has a ton of choice. He has to try and stop Zod and his minions, and he has to try and stop them by whatever means necessary. And if you watch the film closely, you'll notice that the times where Superman is hitting Zod, it's in the air, he's not smashing him into buildings, or it's on the ground where there's nobody, or he drags his face across a building, which doesn't destroy the building. But then there are times when Zod hits him where he smashes through a building, or where Zod's heat vision comes on and it destroys an entire building, and then the whole building falls down. But you'll also notice that most of the city has already been evacuated, and many of the buildings and things have already been destroyed by the gravity beam from Zod's ship, the Black Zero. So, the main battle that takes place with Zod at the end of the film is in a part of the city that's mostly evacuated and already been damaged, and you still see Superman, in my eye, holding back from really causing destruction to the town. He's trying to stop Zod, and in the end, he does what he has to do in an urgent situation where there's not much of a choice. But as far as all the people complaining, too much destruction, too much action, too much like 911, it's a fantasy, it's a fiction, calm down. It's okay not to like the movie, I understand it. Everybody has their own opinion. And I hate having to bring up 9/11, but that's what I'm hearing, and that's another thing critics are using, and fans and other people, that it was too much. Avengers had almost just as much. It was another alien invasion story. There was lots of destruction, and I don't remember ever hearing anything about 911 or real life. And maybe that's because Nolan and crew and Snyder and everybody have tried to make this film feel authentically like there's a real invasion going on, in which case there would be real looking destruction and disaster. But on the other hand, we get back to the Daily Planet at the end of the film and everybody looks fine. Everything looks like nothing happened, which could be a negative as well, because you do need to feel the effects of what has happened to the city. My guess is we're going to see a certain bald, or maybe not bald from some of the rumors I'm hearing, megalomaniac business leader who might actually pledge some dollars, some jobs, some buildings, some technology to rebuild Metropolis. Although we don't know how long it was from the destruction to the end of the film, it's possible that many months have already gone by. Some time has gone by because it has given a Superman time enough to get a little bit of annoyed that the government's trying to track him down, as we see with one of the few humorous scenes in the film. Another complaint by critics is that there's no humor. I think there was too much in the originals because it got a little crazy. But I'll talk about more about this later, but I just wanted to mention that I just don't think you can please everyone, and I think the hype that surrounded this film was almost impossible to satisfy, not because it's not satisfying and not because it doesn't meet the hype, but because in your mind you almost build up an unimaginable scenario of how great it's going to be. And for me, it took a little while to come down from the disappointment of it finally being over after all this waiting, for me, my whole life, for an adult, mature Superman movie, that it's hard to kind of reacclimate your mind to the fact that it's done now, and now we're just going to be talking about it. So what do we do now? That's really where I'm at. But I'm actually over that now, and I think some people may need to see it a second and even a third time, unless you hated it and you're never going to go back anyway. But if you liked it, but you just felt a little let down, try and go back and see it now that all of the stress has died down, all of the hype has died. Now that you understand that it's here, and now that you've kind of come down from that high you had about going to go see the greatest movie of all time, and then you find out it's not, because you're just so excited and so stressed and so hoping for so much. I think that after the letdown of finally having seen it, if you really wanted to love it and you felt a little let down, I think a lot of it might have to do with what I'm saying. So maybe watch it again with a clean slate, and maybe you'll feel better about it. Thanks, everybody, for watching, and remember, always look up in the sky.